Okay. All right. All right. We're talking today about developing a growth mindset, and we're going to get into it very, very quickly here. But, guys, before we do, as always, if you have tuned into the show before, make sure that you're sharing it around with a friend, with a teammate, with a coach. If you haven't, the podcast is called The Elite Development Podcast. Go check it out across all major podcast platforms. And today we're talking about developing a growth mindset. The goal of this show is to help athletes build and grow their careers within their sports. And mindset is obviously one of those really big keys. So you know what? Let's get into it. Let's get into it right away. We're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about building a growth mindset. Now, the reason that I want to talk about this is I want to really get the details going, get you guys understanding that if you are going to succeed as an athlete, it starts in your mind. Plain and simple. It starts in your mind. Yes, the physical abilities are important. Yes, the genetics of, being able to have a certain size, a certain stature, especially in combat sports, a certain reach with your arms are all important. But it starts with your mind. And one of the keys and one of the things that you need to work on developing is a growth mindset. Now, what does a growth mindset mean? Essentially, a growth mindset means that you believe abilities can be shaped and developed over time. So you don't have this fixed mentality of, I'm not good at this thing. You just need to work. And if you put work into it, you will become good at whatever that thing is. Now, why is it important that we develop this? Because one thing that I see so often with athletes is I see athletes just set limitations on themselves. I see athletes that are telling themselves, oh, I'm not good enough to be at that level. Well, yeah, maybe not now, but just because you're not good enough to be at that level now, it doesn't mean that you're just never going to be good enough to be at that level, does it? But instead of using the language, I'm not good enough for that, use the language, I'm working towards that. I am improving myself so that I can get to that, right? Switching up those little mental things to help you start working on your mindset. Because if every day you're telling yourself, I'm not good enough to be at this level, I'm not good enough to achieve this goal, then what you're reinforcing in your mind is, I'm not good enough. But instead, switching up the mindset like that, what we need to reinforce in our minds is, I'm getting better, I'm working on improving, I am developing, all of these things that are going to help us mentally work towards the things that we want. So the first key in developing a growth mindset, and the first thing you guys need to start working on is, plain and simple, you need to be aware of your current mindset. So when I say being aware of your current mindset, the things I need you to start looking for is where your mindset is fixed. So where you don't have that growth mindset. And when I say that, one of the best ways to start looking at this is ask yourself, where do I use the words can't, don't, and won't? So as an example, like, I can't, and then insert really anything there. So for myself, one thing that I know I still get stuck in is with being creative. So I can't come up with new ideas. I can't, develop, I can't do graphic design work on Canva, which is something that you'll see on my social media accounts from time to time. So that's somewhere that still I'm working on developing that growth mindset of being able to improve. And I know that's a simple example that doesn't have much to do with athletes, but where I see that with athletes a lot is, plain and simple, putting a limitation on yourself of, I can't make time for extra sessions in my week. I can't meal prep because I'm too busy. Little things like that are going to have a negative effect on your week. Because even if you are quote unquote too busy, meal prepping is going to be a very positive thing that's going to have a very positive effect on your week. So instead of using the mentality of, I can't meal prep because I'm too busy, switch that mindset up to, how can I meal prep because I'm really busy, but I know I need to do it. And then from there, you start figuring out why you're so busy. You start figuring out if there's anything that you can take out of your schedule. You start figuring out what you can do to add that thing in, instead of just setting the limitation and saying, I can't do it. One of my favorite stories with this, we had a client that trains at our gym, and I'm not going to name any names or anything, but this person would always show up late for their sessions. And every time they walked in, they would always tell, myself and the guy I run the gym with, oh, I just can't be on time for things. I just can't ever do it. I'm always late. I just can't be on time. So I stopped them and I said, well, I've got a good trick for you. You know how you can start being on time for things? Do exactly what you do right now earlier. That was it. That was the trick. And like, we had a good laugh, but honestly, a lot of the time, that's what it comes down to. I have people tell me every day that, they see that I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they say, I just can't wake up early. Yeah, you can. You know how you wake up early? You set an alarm for an earlier time. And when it goes off, you stand up. That's it. But people set these limits on themselves like it's an impossible task for them to achieve. And that is the first step, developing the self-awareness. Where is your mindset fixed? Now, I'm not telling you need to start waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but if you can find those can'ts in your life, whatever they might be that are going to help push you forward, this is the first place to start. Because every time you use that word can't, I can't wake up early, I can't show up on time, I can't get my meal preps done. Every time you use those words, now's the time to reframe them. I can't becomes I'm working on it. I can't becomes I'm trying. I can't becomes I can, right? Making those little mental switches is going to allow you to eliminate those limitations. I used to hate waking up early in the morning too, and I used to tell myself that I couldn't do it, and I barely roll out of bed 10 minutes before I had to get to work. Now I fucking love my mornings. I love having 3 or 4 hours before I'm required to be doing anything work-wise, that I can just work on me, go to the gym, get some reading and stuff done. It's the greatest feeling in the world. But the reason I have that now is because I switched the mentality of I can't wake up early, and I started just fucking doing it because it's not that fucking hard. So once you're aware of that fixed mindset and you start switching it up in your mind, switching the I can'ts to how can I, or I can'ts to I'm working on improving, the next thing you need to understand when it comes to building a growth mindset is you need to be constantly seeking out opportunities to learn. This was another one that I know I struggled with a lot because I would use the limitation of not having money. Opportunity to take a course would come up and I'd say, oh, I can't do that. I can't afford it. And when I actually started looking at it, I realized that I could afford a lot more than I let myself think. I just had such a limiting mindset on finances that everything that came up, I would just say, yeah, I can't afford it. I can't do it. But then as soon as I started opening that up and I started actually investing money in things that were important to me, learning how to grow my business, learning how to improve my coaching knowledge, so many more, what started to happen is I started to shift my mindset overall. And in turn, I started to make more money, which now I don't have to use the I can't afford it because I can. And whether they're financial opportunities or not, so many people get so stuck in not wanting to look bad that they don't put themselves in difficult situations. They don't ask the question that they want to ask. They don't put their hand up when they think they know the answer. They don't go travel to that new gym because they're afraid that, they're not going to be good compared to the talent that they have at that gym. But the thing you've got to understand is putting your hand up and asking the question and not being afraid to look stupid doing it is one of the things that's going to help you grow. Because if you're unsure about something and you don't ask the question, now you're just going to keep being unsure. You're going to keep being uncertain. You're going to keep lacking confidence. But if you can get over the fact that you might stumble over your words, you might, say something stupid or think that you said something stupid, you're going to give yourself more opportunities to grow. Because even if the question isn't, the greatest question that's totally life-changing, you're giving yourself the confidence that you are a person who is seeking opportunities to learn. One of my favorite stories with this was recently when I was in Australia at the Clean Health Live Summit. Sebastian Oreb, a guy that I've been following for a very, very long time. He's at the Australian Strength Coach, or I think just Australian Strength Coach on Instagram. He's worked with World's Strongest Man. He's worked with UFC fighters. He's worked with athletes of all different kinds. He was one of the presenters, and he was speaking right before the seminar let out for lunch one day. And I remember there were probably like 300 people in the room. And I remember as the seminar was letting out for lunch, he was walking out, and I like bulldozed through about 300 people so that I could ask him a question that I had about his presentation. And yeah, I felt uncomfortable going up to this guy and asking him a question because I've been following him for years. But being able to go off and do that, first of all, gave me the answer I was looking for. And second, I sat and had like a good 10-minute conversation with somebody that I've been forever because I got fucking uncomfortable and went and asked the question despite being nervous to do it. Because my value of wanting to learn and wanting to grow is higher than my value of wanting to slip under the radar and not be noticed. Now, when it comes to seeking out learning opportunities, the big thing I want you guys to take away from that is stop being afraid to look bad. Stop being afraid to feel stupid. Stop being afraid of getting uncomfortable. You know, that sparring partner you want to do rounds with that you keep not asking could be the one who gives you that one trick that helps you win your next fight. That coach that's coming to the gym and doing that seminar that you attended and the questions that you have for them could be the answers that you need to be able to come through to your next fight and win. You know, you never know what uncomfortable moment is going to lead to something massively successful in your future. So stop being afraid of it. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here when it comes to developing the growth mindset, we've touched on it a little bit already, is just changing your language. And I cannot stress the importance of this enough, but just changing your language. You know, like the example I gave of the person who trained at our gym that just could not show up on time. No matter what, just could not show up on time. Oh, I just can't do it. I'm just always late. When I gave them that trick of, you know how you show up on time, just do exactly what you're doing now earlier, that literally was a game changer. This person is on time almost always now. This other than, you know, problems with work or traffic or whatever, which unfortunately are things that we can't always control. But they actually started showing up on time after hearing that. Like it was that simple of a switch, and it actually made a difference, which is crazy, but that is what it takes for so many of you. Just changing up the language. Understand that those limitations you put on yourself, the I can'ts that you put on yourself, aren't fucking true. I can't make it to the next level. Yeah, you can. You're just not there yet. But if you keep training and keep working towards it and keep asking questions and keep putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations, you will. Because guess what? The athletes that were at the highest level ever started at the lowest level too. Conor McGregor, the richest athlete in the history of the UFC, was a plumber. And then quit all that, went all in on MMA, and became a double champion and became the highest paid athlete in the history of the UFC. A plumber. Let's say that one more time. A plumber to that, right? So whatever position you're in right now, there is no reason you can't do the same other than the limitations you put in your mind. So changing the language and making sure that your focus is not yet instead of failure. So I can't get to the next level. I'm not at the next level yet, but I'm working towards it, making those little shifts within your language. And finally, the last thing that I want to touch on today when it comes to developing a growth mindset is celebrating progress. This is something that I know as a business owner I struggled with, but am getting a lot better at. But this is something as well for athletes that I want to really stress. It's very easy to get stuck in the outcome. It's very easy to get stuck in the outcome of, you know, that training partner of mine smashes me every time we roll together. But what you got to start learning how to do is figure out the positives within the process. I remember having this conversation with one of my athletes, jiu-jitsu guy, and he came into the gym one day and he was disappointed in himself because, you know, he'd kind of gotten smashed at practice that day. And so we were talking, and I was like, well, who are you rolling with? And the guys he was rolling with were all bigger than him and all higher belt levels than him. So I kind of laughed and I was like, dude, why are you upset that they're beating you? They're supposed to beat you. Like the win here is making them work at all. Because if guys are 40, 50 pounds heavier than you and they've been doing this longer than you, they're supposed to beat you. So yeah, obviously it's cool if you can beat them, if you can get a submission or whatever, but stop putting your focus solely on the outcome of I need to win these rounds and start understanding that by making them work, by giving them any challenge whatsoever, that's a fucking win for you. And every week, obviously, you're trying to give them more of a challenge. And yeah, you still are working towards wanting to beat them, but stop getting down on yourself because guys that are bigger than you and more experienced than you are better than you. They're supposed to be. But instead, if you can start to switch your mind and start looking at the positives, be like, hey, instead of this guy tapping me out in 30 seconds, this time I actually made him switch to 3 different submissions and it took him 3 full minutes to tap me out. It still doesn't feel good getting tapped out in 3 minutes, but it feels a hell of a lot better than getting tapped out on the first try in 30 seconds, doesn't it? Right? So as you guys go through this process of developing the growth mindset, I like that example, but then even just in your own day-to-day, think about this. In your own day-to-day, when you're working on developing this growth mindset, start catching the little wins, right? Every time that you switch an I can't to how can I, every time that you make that little mental change for yourself, celebrate that. Because that's you working towards improvement. And that ultimately is what allows you to see success. Seeing success in your sport long term doesn't mean necessarily winning your next fight. It means improving the quality of person and athlete that you are long term so that you can win more fights over the next 10 years. Right? Obviously, yes, you still want to win your next one too, but the goal is success long term. So stop focusing on just the outcome and start focusing on the process of how you get the results you want. So guys, that is it. That is all. I hope you got some good value from this. If you did, I would love to know what it is. Make sure to shoot me a message across all my social media platforms, any of them. You can find the notes on how to do that in the show notes below. As always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next episode.